One of the objectives of the Buy Local Summit and Expo is to encourage corporate South Africa to increase its uptake of locally sourced and manufactured goods and services required for their day-to-day operations. With the weak economy and other factors at play, CEO Eustace Mashimbye says they are observing less businesses closing shop now compared to the COVID-19 pandemic period. In fact, its annual vetting process shows that in the last 2 years, businesses on their database remain operational.
Those who participate in those programs have had lots of successes. We package a minimum of 100 success stories every year of entities and predominantly smaller entities, SMMEs who are, benefiting from the access to market programs and some interventions, who then come forward to us and give us a sense of what it is that they've benefited and how it has helped them by way of impact, whether you've been able to retain jobs, you've been able to create new job opportunities. I mean, we are showcasing 6 different stories from us and some of our strategic partners, including the Department of Small Business Development, as well as ABSA, who are our headline partner for this event, showcasing those stories of instances where we've moved entities from operating at the back of their garages or in smaller shops to factories. And that is part of the plan of partnering with Department of Small Business, such that SMMEs can then get to a point where we hand them over to the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition as industrialists.
Mashimbye describes as brutal the budget cuts they've had to endure over the last few years, making it slightly harder to drive the buy local messaging, especially for their other campaigns that do not attract the same sponsorship as the Buy Local Summit and Expo.
We know that we are able to achieve much more. But we need resources. Fortunately, with a flagship like the Buy Local Summit and Expo, I think the corporate South Africa and some public sector entities have strong belief and have grown to be fond of the campaign, and they know the value proposition behind it, and so they invest behind it. And this specific flagship program pays for itself through sponsorship generated in both the public sector and the private sector, predominantly in the private sector. But there are many other interventions that are not necessarily, paying for themselves, and that is where we rely on the minimal resources we have, and so we are not in all instances able to do as much as we need to do. We're trying to change mindsets. We're trying to change consumers and move them from their traditional purchasing behaviors, from products that they have an affinity towards, and so that needs us to keep saying the message and for them as consumers to hear it over and over again, daily. Should be ideally, how often we communicate the buy local message and the economic impact of our purchasing decisions as consumers. So we are not able to do that. And so that makes it slightly harder.
He says in the years that they are pushing the localization agenda, they see more general consumers leaning towards buying locally manufactured clothing and textiles.
When you talk about the public sector, when you talk about big business, we see it cutting across many different types of products, including raw materials and components. Some are even looking at their value chains to say, what is it that I'm buying that is part of my, production that I can buy locally, that I can source locally. And that's why what we have done is created a portal known as Market Access Platform, where we list suppliers of different types of items, finished goods and raw materials and components. I mean, if you think of the steel industry in the country, it needs our support. And so if you think of steel components, whether it's nuts and bolts and the higher steel items that are on the downstream side, there is availability of all of those items. So in some instances, we find businesses that are saying we've been importing this, we don't necessarily have to import it. We are seeing a lot of companies shift towards packaging. In fact, one of the commitments we are showcasing at the Buy Local Summit and Expo on Monday is a commitment from a glass packaging manufacturer that is, giving a commitment to say all of the raw material that goes into them making those glass bottles that are then in turn sold to FMCG manufacturers are going to be sourced locally.
The summit will feature discussions around building a resilient economy through localization, as well as the impact of illicit trade on the local economy and industrialization. Diabosito, SABC News, Johannesburg.